We finished tops and bottoms. We're ready to do some type of reading response. This is a summary graphic organizer. We're going to make a summary of the story so that we can remember what we read. This also helps your teachers to know if you understood the story, because this is all about the important story elements. Sometimes you'll see an organizer like this to help you to write the summary. It just gives you step by step and helps you to brainstorm some of the ideas in the text. So we're going to use this one to write our summary. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is who is the main character. And actually in this story, there's quite a few characters we could talk about. We could talk about Bear, we could talk about Hare, we could talk about Mrs. Hare, we could talk about all the little Hare children. But if we're going to talk about the most important character in the story, I would say it would be Bear. So we're going to use Bear today as our main character. Could we write this about Hare? We could, but I think it's more enjoyable if we talk about Bear, since he's the one that was tricked. So what did Bear want? That's the next part of this. He wanted Hare to do all of the work for him, right? He wanted Hare to plant his crops and he would get half of whatever he did. Because I think that Bear thought if he let him use his land to plant crops, it would only be fair if they got half of whatever he had growing in that area. So Bear wanted Hare to plant and harvest crops, and then that way he would get half of everything. Isn't that what he wanted? Even though it was Hare's idea, that is what Bear wanted. But what was the problem? The problem was that Hare tricked Bear and only gave him the bad parts of the crops. The parts that we didn't want to eat, right? That's the parts he would give. And he would take all the parts that were the good things to eat. So Hare tricked Bear and only gave him the bad parts of the crops. So how did Bear try to solve the problem? Bear decided to plant and harvest his own crops. And he told Hare that they were never going to be business partners again. Remember that? Then what happened? What happened after that? Bear was planting and harvesting his own crops, and what did Hare do? He opened his vegetable stand, and he was able to have his own land again. So Bear and Hare each had their own crops. Hare had a vegetable stand to make money for his kids. That is pretty much the gist of the story. And when we do brainstorming like that, we can get all of our thoughts down, so then it's easier to take that information and write our summary. And that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to take all of these things that we did in our graphic organizer, and we are going to write a summary. The summary is important because it's going to tell us the most important details and the big idea of this text. Since it's fiction, we're going to take those story elements and put them together. If it was nonfiction, we'd be picking out different things. We'd be picking out the main topic and the main idea and the details that go along with it. But we're going to use our graphic organizer to write our summary. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say someone. Who was the someone? Bear. And what did he want? Bear wanted Hare to give him half of the crops he was growing. The problem is Bear didn't do anything to work for him, did he? And so what happened? Hare tricked Bear and gave him the bad parts of the crops. That was a problem for Bear. He didn't expect that, did he? So what happened? So if we go back up to our graphic organizer, we can see Bear decided to plant and harvest his own crops. See how I'm kind of taking the ideas that I did in the organizer, but I can reword it and make it sound better. So he decided to plant and harvest his own crops. I'm going to go right back up, make reference to the last part of it. And if you look at it, we can say who? Bear. Is that in our summary? Yes. What did he want? He wanted Hare to give him half of the crops he was growing. But what happened? Hare tricked Bear and only gave him the bad parts of the crops. So what did Bear do? He decided to plant and harvest his own crops. Then we'll go ahead with the resolution to the problem, because this is how everything was solved at the end. Then Bear and Hare each had their own crops. Hare had his own vegetable stand. This is what I'm going to use for my resolution. So now, all good writers go back and they reread what they wrote to make sure that it made sense. And then they can change things if they want or add a few details. Notice that I didn't write a really long summary. Summaries are meant to just be those important pieces just to give the reader or the writer an idea of what's happening in the text. If I was going to do something with great detail, we would call that a retelling. I don't want to retell the whole story. I just want to give a summary. So let's read it. Bear wanted Hare to give him half of the crops he was growing, but Hare tricked Bear and gave him the bad parts of the crops. So Bear decided to plant and harvest his own crops. Then Bear and Hare each had their own crops, and Hare had his own vegetable stand. Is that the gist of the story? Is that a good summary? I think so. You did great today. If you want to change it up and do something different, maybe use Hare as your main character this time, you can. But remember, when we take these ideas like a summary and we do some type of reading response, it helps the teachers to know if you understood the story, and it helps you to remember the story. Thanks for joining me. Bye.